I'm Andrew Patterson from interest.co.nz, and with me my colleague here at interest.co, Amanda Morrall, the author of this new book, Money Matters. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Andrew.
So, Amanda, as you point out in the intro to the book, bookshop shelves are almost groaning under the weight of books these days on personal management, personal finance. Why did you think there was a need for another one?
Well, I don't think they're necessarily groaning under the weight of personal finance books. What I indicate in the book is that we have heaps and heaps of books on self-help, and alternately we have lots of books on money. What we don't have, it's starting to change, is books that blend the two, because the biggest mistake I think people make about money is treating it in isolation from their personal lives, what they really want to achieve with their lives, their hopes and their dreams. So to a large extent, the book has a very holistic approach and focuses on tying in money with what it is you really want to do with your life.
Are we a product of our upbringing when it comes to money? Can these skills actually be taught to somebody? Or if you get off to a bad start, can you actually change?
Certainly a bad start is not going to help you, but I've had some really candid conversations with people about money and their upbringings, and there's no single sort of path that people follow with money. I think the biggest thing is having sort of this light bulb moment about money. When you recognize that you want to make some changes, you start to identify what your patterns and your habits are, and then you work towards setting out a plan to create the desired outcome that you want. I think a lot of people drift through life, generally speaking, but also they drift through management of their money without realizing that they actually have a huge amount of control over their money that they don't realize. Yeah.
So when you were writing the book, was that what stood out for you? What was the single most obvious takeout, perhaps, that you found in putting the book together?
I don't know if there was one single obvious outtake. I mean, I've been working in this space for about 6 years now, and certainly working with interest and sort of interacting with readers has raised some really interesting discussions around money. Again, everybody has a very different view of it, but it kind of all relates back to what your views of money, and also tying it into what do you want to do with it. And there's no singular path for people, and that's the thing. It's very personal. So I can't just give blanket advice or recommendations about do this, do that. It all depends on where you're coming from, what you want to do, whether you're carrying a lot of debt, whether travel is a big thing for you, whether you want to own a house. So it's really tying in money to your personal specific goals.
Did you identify a mistake that perhaps is the most common trap that people fall into?
I don't know if there's a single biggest mistake. I guess if there is one, it's, again, what I mentioned before, is people not recognizing the fact that they have a huge amount of control over their circumstances. It's just awareness, for one, and also mindfulness, making very considered decisions about what it is you're doing with money. And those daily transactions, those seemingly mundane exchanges, actually, over time, can impact significantly on your financial outcomes. So it's really just kind of sitting back, and that reflection is the most important part of personal finance, is reflection, contemplation, and then taking a look. Because as another financial blogger had put it, personal finance is not rocket science, it's pocket science, but the harder stuff quite often relates to the self-helpy issues. Where are you at? Why are you spending heaps amount of money on this? Because quite often people are spending to fill emotional voids in their life, and that's something that I hope I've got through in the book.
And it's never been easier to spend, is it, with FPOS cards and credit cards so readily available?
It is, and there's a huge amount of consumer temptations out there, very expensive ones that weren't there when I was, in my 20s, $500 phones or more, actually. I think iPhones are $1,000, and iPads and computers and this and that and cars. So there's no end of temptations out there, material ones. But it's having restraints, controls, whether they're actually necessary in your life, and taking that pause, hitting the pause button before you just start shelling out, because it just gets you into a huge amount of trouble. Sorry, I was going to say, for the younger person, and I wished I had somebody, me talking to myself, a younger version of myself, and trying to raise those issues and how important they are. Because, if you start, thinking about these things in your 20s, you'll have so much more financial liberty and freedom in your 40s or your 50s by making well-considered decisions.
It's a good point. I was going to mention about that because I remember one statistic I remember reading a few years ago is that something like 25% of those people who are bankrupt are actually under the age of something like 23 or 24. So, a quarter of bankrupts are people who have clearly basically not even got off the rails properly.
Well, there's a lot of recklessness out there, but again, I think, and there's a lot of desperation. I mean, you look at the stats about the people who are taking antidepressants in the United States especially, it's extraordinary. But again, a lot of people are spending to compensate for emotional needs in their lives. And, I'm not going to say you can wave a magic wand with personal finance and fix all that, but it's actually recognizing that there is a direct tie-in between the two issues of your life and addressing them to that extent. But the other thing about youth, I think, and, I don't want to be, a fear-monger or anything, but I think today's youth have a lot more challenges ahead of them than we did, for example, because of the insecurities around the futures of pension schemes, and that's been a well-identified issue worldwide, and savings rates are going to have to increase to compensate for the potential that there could be not as much money in the pot as there were for baby boomers retiring, and also the health care issue that faces us, everybody living increasingly longer lives, so your money lasting you in old age. This is a really big topic in the retirement savings scheme. So for younger people, this issue may be forced upon them, really. Yeah.
It's never been more important to get off to a good start.
Absolutely.
The other issue too is the regulatory environment, because we've seen quite a few changes around that in New Zealand. But what lessons should people be aware of in that space?
I think the single biggest thing there is just knowing that there is regulation where there was none before, and also if you're actively seeking guidance or help or taking on a relationship with somebody in that sector, knowing what their qualifications are. And now the regulation requires them to be very candid and upfront with you and tell you how and why they're qualified, for example, whether they're an AFA or a registered advisor and what kind of class advice they can give you, that kind of thing. But people, what I've been telling people before in interviews is that, if you're entering one of these relationships, treat that person like you would a doctor. You want to be very comfortable with that relationship. You want to know what their background is. You want to have a rapport with them. So don't treat those relationships lightly. Don't assume that the person that you rock up to at the bank to get your KiwiSaver knows actually much more than you do. In a lot of cases, they don't. So take greater responsibility for your situation, and also do some due diligence, ask harder questions of the people that you're bringing into your life to help you with your financial decisions.
Well, thanks very much, Amanda. And of course, you'll be encouraging everybody to get out and buy the book.
Well, I would welcome people who want to buy the book, but if they don't think it's for them, it might make a great gift for somebody who's younger and struggling with finances, and who might achieve a better outcome by getting caught up on these issues while they're young enough to make a difference. And
interest.co.nz is making a special offer available to readers as well, and you'll find details of that below this video. Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, Andrew.